If Lady Lucas has a title and Mrs. Bennet doesn't, then that means she should outrank her, right? Actually, the answer to that question is a little bit more complicated. In Chapter 5 of Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen gives us a glimpse into the social hierarchy of the Regency era, hidden beneath what seems like ordinary gossip. Today, we are talking about rank, nobility, the gentry class, and more importantly, who ranks higher, Lady Lucas or Mrs. Bennet? In Chapter 5 of Pride and Prejudice, the Lucases and the Bennets get together to discuss the events of the Meryton Ball. We are also introduced to Sir William Lucas's background, and we see Mrs. Bennet unabashedly bragging about Jane's beauty to the Lucases. Meanwhile, the Lucases are all obliging and courteous, which seems really out of character for someone with a title. So this is a good opportunity for us to discuss ranks, titles, the gentry class, and the peerage during the Regency era, so let's get into it. In Jane Austen's novels, most of her characters belong to the gentry class, which we discuss a little bit in episode 1. But there's another class of people in this era that outranks all of Jane Austen's characters, and this is the peerage, or we can say the nobility. Rural England was governed by a strict hierarchy. At the very top was the landed aristocracy, the old and powerful families with hereditary titles and large estates. Typically, such families were of the peerage and lived at their seats or estates for generations, owning thousands and thousands of acres of land. These titled ranks include dukes, marquises, earls, viscounts, and barons. What does it mean to have a seat in the House of Lords? Members of the peerage traditionally held seats in the House of Lords, the upper chambers of Parliament. This meant they had the right to participate in national government. They could debate and vote on laws, and their political influence was built into their title. So having a seat wasn't just symbolic. It gave a nobleman real legislative power and placed him at the center of the national decision-making. This is why peers outrank even the wealthiest members of the gentry. Their authority was political as well as social. In the peerage, everyone knew exactly where they rank. But in the gentry class, it's much less defined. The gentry were defined by land, income, and social standing, and not by titles. This class includes baronets, like Sir Walter Elliot from Persuasion, knights, like Sir William Lucas, untitled landed families such as the Bennets and Mr. Darcy, and professional gentlemen. These could include sons of gentlemen who make the church, law, army, or navy their profession. At the bottom of the titled ranks are baronets and knights. These are always addressed as Sir. They were much more numerous in the 19th century and were much less influential in English society. A baronet's title was hereditary, like the peerage, but they did not sit in the House of Lords. They constituted the upper reaches of the gentry class. At the bottom of the titled ranks, but not necessarily at the top of all the others in the gentry class, are knights. These titles were not hereditary and lacked the grandeur of a baronetcy. Distinguished doctors or lawyers would often become knights. This bordered on comical in literature, and we see Jane Austen playing with this satire a little in the novel. Knights did not automatically outrank the rest of the gentry class. We see that in Pride and Prejudice, when the titleless Mr. Darcy outranks everyone. And that's because Mr. Darcy's large fortune, his respectable family and connections, and his large estate. A knighthood elevated prestige, but not class origin. Addressing someone either in conversation or in writing during this period is full of nuance and is very complicated. But seeing as we don't really have a lot of characters in Pride and Prejudice, or in any of Jane Austen's works for that matter, that are of nobility, I don't really want to get into that topic too much. But I do want to focus on addressing someone as Sir or Lady because in Pride and Prejudice alone, we have Sir William Lucas, Lady Lucas, and Lady Catherine de Bourgh. And I think it's interesting to discuss the differences between those titles. First, let's discuss who is Sir William Lucas. Let's see what the novel says about him. Sir William Lucas had been formerly in trade in Meryton, where he had made a tolerable fortune and risen to the honor of knighthood by an address to the king during his mayoralty. So Jane Austen tells us that he was formerly in trade in Meryton, that he made his wealth through business, and that he was gifted a knighthood while he was serving as mayor for giving a nice speech. So the key point is that Mr. Lucas, after becoming a knight, becomes Sir William Lucas. That is Sir, first name, surname. Whereas a wife of a knight or baronet also gets addressed as lady plus surname. So we see here, Mrs. Lucas becomes Lady Lucas. But the family is still gentry adjacent. They are not aristocracy. Whereas Lady Catherine de Bourgh is the daughter of an earl. Daughters of earls, marquises, and dukes were addressed as lady. They were addressed by lady, first name. So we see here Lady Catherine de Bourgh. It is safe to say that ladies of nobility hated sharing this form of address with those of lower ranks, such as Lady Lucas. So we see here two very different usages of lady. Lady surname, lady first name. They sound familiar to a modern reader, but Jane Austen expects us to hear the difference immediately. Lady Catherine de Bourgh outranks Lady Lucas enormously. But where does Mrs. Bennet fit in all of this? As I mentioned earlier, there's a sense of competition from Mrs. Bennet towards Lady Lucas, and that might be because in a sense they are almost equals. We learned that Lady Lucas was formerly the wife of a wealthy businessman who was gifted a knighthood, and then they've retired, bought a house in the country, and now they are a respectable family and they are very courteous to their neighbors. Whereas Mrs. Bennet, we learn in chapter 7 a little bit about her background as well. Let's read a quote.
Her father had been an attorney in Meryton and had left her £4,000. She had a sister married to a Mr. Phillips, who had been a clerk to their father and succeeded him in the business, and a brother settled in London in a respectable line of trade.
Mrs. Bennet comes from a respectable but non-gentry family with commercial connections. Her brother, Mr. Gardiner, is a prosperous London merchant, and her sister, Mrs. Phillip, is married to an attorney in Meryton. Mrs. Bennet is only landed gentry through her marriage to Mr. Bennet. So we see here two women from very similar backgrounds that have both elevated their social status in different ways, but almost to about the same level, with Mrs. Bennet having slightly the upper hand because her husband is landed gentry, although his wealth and estate is not very large. It is more prestigious at the time if you are landed gentry. This slight sense of gossip and competition on both sides of Mrs. Bennet and Mrs. Lucas do come into play in later chapters of the novel, and we'll discuss that later. Now let's discuss a little bit maybe the social hierarchy of all these characters from highest to lowest. At the very top, and in a class of her own, is Lady Catherine de Bourgh. She is titled because she is the daughter of an earl. She uses lady plus first name, and she is true aristocracy. Mr. Darcy is untitled but belongs to the upper gentry due to his immense wealth, estate, and family connections. The Bennets are landed gentry, though Mrs. Bennet herself comes from a commercial background and only holds gentry status through marriage. Sir William Lucas is a knight, elevated for civic service, placing him in the gentry adjacent but not amongst the nobility. Lady Lucas holds her title as the wife of a knight. Thank you so much for watching. I just wanted to mention that this is just a hobby channel. I'm not an expert. I just really love Pride and Prejudice and Jane Austen and literature and doing research and wanted to share that with you. If you want to hear an audio recording of Pride and Prejudice, then click this link. And I hope you'll stay for next week's episode where we will discuss Jane Bennet's Cold. So if you like period dramas, slow burn romances, and emotionally devastating letters, then consider subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!